Shocking, unexpected, lacking compassion and empathy. What is going on in this gospel passage today? It is difficult, to say the least. It is also troubling at times and can make us wonder what Jesus intended as he spoke so bluntly to a woman who was pleading for his help. Maybe the most troubling aspect of this gospel passage is how it might remind us, all of us, of how we've all felt at some point in our lives. A feeling, however unfounded, that we're not good enough, not worthy enough, not faithful enough to be heard by God. But is this what we truly believe about God? That we have to be good enough? That we have to be deserving enough? That's not the God that most of us believe in. And yet we have this gospel passage in Matthew 15, specifically 21 to 28. A story about a Canaanite woman who finds Jesus, begs him of his help for her daughter, and Jesus initially tells this woman that he can't do a thing to help her, all because of her ethnicity as a non-Israelite. What is going on in this gospel? And I've had the same dilemma with this specific gospel passage for quite a while. And I had an opportunity in seminary to write about this passage and my dilemma with it. In 2015, I submitted a story for a book that was to be published. And while my narrative was not selected for that book, the exercise of analyzing this gospel text and putting myself in the place of that Canaanite woman was quite helpful. It helped me to come to terms with this very difficult gospel passage. It helped me to not only identify with this unnamed woman and her desperate need of help, but it also helped me to identify with Jesus in a new way and the burden of being a Messiah that he carried with him every day. So today, I'm going to read a part of that narrative, of that story that I wrote about the faith of the Canaanite woman that we find in Matthew 15, 21 to 28. And if you would like a full copy of that story, I have plenty of copies available, and please see me after worship, and I or any of the ushers would be happy to give you that short story. So if you will, allow me to take on the voice of the Canaanite woman and what she might have felt that day. The healing man, the miracle worker, the deliverer of demons. I had heard many names used to describe this man, Jesus, from the town of Nazareth. Some thought he was the son of the Israelite God, while others thought that he was an impostor. Many called him a threat to the Roman rule. He was of Jewish descent and was called Rabbi by many. Even in my rural village, far from Nazareth, most people knew about this man. I myself had heard much about him. I knew he was a teacher and a type of prophet. I knew that many believed him to be a Messiah. Now, for all that I've been told about him, I couldn't quite comprehend how a person could be both man and divine. A son of a God walking among us? Now, what I found most curious was the stories I've been told about his acts of healing. He had supposedly healed paralytics and those with demons at Capernaum and Gennesaret. If he was a religious man, as many claimed, he was certainly not a typical religious man. It was said that he healed not only Jews, but also Greeks. And I found this entirely perplexing, as Greeks of Canaanite descent, like me, were viewed by the Israelite Jews as a cursed people. Israel was God's chosen people, and we were not. Could this man really be healing and driving out demons from our people too? Not entirely sure of what to expect, I asked my neighbor to stay with my ill daughter so that I might go and find this Jesus in the hopes that he might be able to heal her. This mission seemed foolish to me, as I understood the societal rules of my village. He was a man and I a Greek widow. Still, I was desperate, and I would not let these rules hinder me. Not today. My daughter's life depended on me, and I would do whatever I could to get help for her. There seemed to be nothing left to lose, and today I would not take no for an answer. I ran through my village, aware that I might have little time before this man, Jesus, went on to another town. I wasn't sure if I would find him, and if I did find him, what I might even say to him. I was only sure of my deep, deep need and the possibility that he might truly have divine power to heal my daughter. Running through the streets, I hoped to see a crowd or some other hint of his location. My village was not large, but at this time of day, it was arduous to run up the stone pathways. The village seemed especially congested today, and it felt as if everyone in my path was a barrier to my daughter's healing. Finally, I came to a clearing, and I saw some Jewish men huddled around a door. Now, I knew this house, as it belonged to a prominent family in the village. Seeing these Jewish men gave me hope, a little bit of hope, that maybe I had found this man, Jesus. Enough hope that I went up behind them and I began shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David." I hoped that my recognition of Jesus' identity would gain his attention. Some of the men looked toward a man standing in the middle of the front room. This confirmed for me that I had indeed found this man, Jesus the Nazarene. "Rabbi," I said to him, "my daughter is tormented by a demon. Can you help me?" Silence. He did not even look toward me. The men who were gathered walked over and began talking with him, looking back at me as they whispered. This at least gave me a slight glimmer of hope. Perhaps they would convince Jesus to give healing to my daughter. Again, he did not look at me, but instead stared at those men and said, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." My hope faded as I understood what he meant. This man was a Jewish rabbi. He wasn't supposed to help people like me, and yet he had helped people like me. As discouraging as his words were, I knew I must press further. I had been through too much, and so had my daughter. For her sake and for mine, I would not walk away without at least some acknowledgement. While I understood the social lines drawn between people like Jesus and people like me, I had also come to believe that this man might be different. I knew that he had healed others from outside of his own people, and he was said to be compassionate to all and kind toward children. Some said he didn't observe the rules of his own religion and was known to help and to heal even on their Sabbath. Now I hope that perhaps that compassion might be extended even to me. So with all the courage that I could muster, I knelt before him and said, "Lord, help me. Help me." There was a need to show this man reverence, and still I needed to be insistent. My daughter's life depended on me, and yet I knew that without some divine intervention, I was unable to help her at all. Astonishingly, Jesus looked at me and said, "It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." Silence overtook the room. For much of my adult life, I had been treated like one of the dogs that roamed the village. Now this man was assigning me with that label? It was almost more than I could bear, and I felt tears welling up behind my eyes. The very thing that brought me here, willing to leave my daughter's side, was the belief that this man's divinity somehow extended even to my family. I now needed him to hear me and to acknowledge not only my need, but me as a person. The road that my daughter and I had been on had been long, and until today, all of my hope had faded away completely. As I fought back tears, I looked up at Jesus and said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Timidity had typically defined me, and now I was challenging the honor of a Jewish man. I understood that this man's purpose was to reveal his divine identity to Israelite Jews, but from all that I had learned about him, I believed that his name, what people called him, Son of God, I believe that it somehow was meant to include all people. And if I was to be compared to a dog, then could I not at least have a small portion of what he was offering? His reply came almost instantly. "Woman," he said as he looked at me with empathy, "great is your faith." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "Let it be done for you as you wish." Jesus then walked by, gently placed his hand on my head, and left the house. The other men quickly followed behind, and the home was empty. I got up and I ran out of the house, but he was nowhere in sight. Frantic, I ran back toward my home, hoping to find him there. It was quiet, still, as I approached my house. I slowly walked inside, nervous and apprehensive. From the back room, my neighbor ran toward me. "Adonia, Adonia," she cried out. "Your daughter is healed." I looked at my beautiful daughter still lying on my bed. She looked up at me weakly and smiled. I held her in my arms and I promised that everything would now be all right. We had hope. I have long thought about that day. This man, Jesus, had made a profound and lasting impact on our lives. My conversation with him still lingers in my mind, even now. Was he testing my faith in his divine ability? Was he challenging me that I might rise above all that had oppressed me? Or was there something deeper at work? Could it be that I helped him to realize his purpose? Still, as I think more and more about this man, I think I understand something about him that is deeply personal. I believe that my own need to be known, truly known and valued, reminded Jesus of his own need to be truly known. Over and over again, he had given of himself physically, spiritually, emotionally. He had healed so many people, fed so many people, and was continually treated as a spectacle. By the time he arrived in my village, he looked like a tired and broken man, just as I too felt. And when I challenged Jesus yet a third time, he looked directly into my eyes. For a fleeting moment, we shared something profound and yet hard to define. I believe that he realized the very thing that I had come to realize. In that brief instant, Jesus saw not only my need to be known and heard, but also his own. I needed Jesus to know my worth, and he needed people to know his, beyond all the healings and miracles and things that he could do for others. My whole life had been determined by my family's value and status, and we were viewed as having little to no worth. And when I came to find Jesus, I needed more than ever before to be seen and heard. My needs and my value needed acknowledgement. That day, Jesus and I connected. I saw him, and he saw me, and we both needed to be known. Nothing would ever be the same again.